I thought I had the perfect life, until I found out she was hiding a secret. What I discovered next will shock you. Stay tuned and subscribe for more shocking stories. When I first met Sarah, I thought I had found the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. She was kind, beautiful, and so incredibly supportive. We met in college, and within months, we were inseparable. Our relationship was easy, like it was meant to be. She was always there for me, and I was there for her. I was completely in love with her. And for the longest time, I thought I had everything I could ever want. We got married shortly after I graduated, and things seemed perfect. We built a home together, shared our dreams, and supported each other through every challenge life threw our way. Sarah was the perfect wife, loving, caring, and dedicated. We had an unspoken understanding that we would always be there for one another, no matter what. But in the last few months, something started to change. I noticed little things at first, like how Sarah seemed distracted, less engaged with me when we were together. She started coming home later, working long hours, and when I asked her about it, she would brush it off with a simple excuse. "Work's been crazy," she'd say. "I'm just trying to stay on top of everything." At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her, and I assumed that work stress was the reason for her distant behavior. But as time went on, I began to feel a shift in the way she interacted with me. We weren't laughing together like we used to. We didn't talk about our future anymore, and our intimacy began to fade. I tried to bring it up, but every time I did, Sarah would shut me down, making me feel like I was overreacting or being too sensitive. One night, when I was home alone, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I went through Sarah's things. I had no intention of invading her privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I needed to understand what was happening in our marriage. As I sifted through her things, my eyes landed on her phone. The temptation was too strong. I told myself I was just trying to understand her behavior, so I picked up the phone and unlocked it. What I saw made my heart drop. There, in black and white, were messages between Sarah and another man. The messages were flirtatious, full of longing, and hints at secret meetings. They were planning to meet up at a hotel, talking about spending the night together. My stomach twisted into knots as I read each word. I couldn't believe it. This was the woman I had trusted, the woman I thought was my everything, and here she was, having an affair with another man. I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. The person I had loved for so long, the woman I had married, had been lying to me, hiding a secret life. All the moments we had shared, all the years I had dedicated to this relationship, suddenly seemed like a lie. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Why did she do this to me? The anger began to bubble up inside me, but it was nothing compared to the heartbreak I felt. I had spent years building a life with this woman, and now I was staring at the destruction of everything we had built. My hands shook as I put the phone down, trying to process the pain and confusion swirling in my mind. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? But as I sat there, feeling numb and lost, a sudden realization hit me. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the trust we had built, the connection we once had, and how it had all been shattered in an instant. I couldn't believe that Sarah, the woman I thought I knew, had kept this secret from me for so long. I had always believed that if something went wrong in our marriage, we would work through it together. But this was something different. It wasn't just about her cheating on me. It was about how she had made me feel like I was crazy for questioning her, how she had manipulated my trust for so long. The woman I loved had deceived me in the worst way possible. I had a decision to make. I could confront her, confront the man she was seeing, or I could walk away. But no matter what I chose, I knew that our marriage would never be the same. The life I had thought we would share, The love I thought we had was gone. In its place was betrayal, hurt, and confusion. As I sat in that quiet house, the phone still sitting in front of me, I realized that I was at a crossroads. The man I thought I was had to change. The trust I had was broken, and there was no going back. I knew one thing for sure. I needed answers. I had to find out how deep this betrayal went. And when I confronted Sarah, I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing. The truth was out now, and there was no ignoring it. After reading the messages and feeling the betrayal deep in my bones, I sat there in silence, unable to comprehend what had just unfolded in front of me. The woman I had loved and trusted had been leading a double life. I felt like I had been hit by a ton of bricks, my mind swirling with confusion, anger, and disbelief. I knew that I couldn't just let this go. I had to confront her. There was no way around it. I wasn't going to let Sarah's lies destroy me without understanding the full truth, but I couldn't just walk up to her and throw accusations around without evidence. I needed to know everything: who this man was, how long the affair had been going on, and why she had betrayed me like this. My first thought was to call her immediately, to demand an explanation. But I didn't. I needed to be calm, collected. I didn't want to give her the chance to deny everything, to spin a story that might still make her seem innocent. No, I needed to have everything in front of me before I could say a word. So I decided to follow her. I wasn't proud of it, but it seemed like the only way to get the answers I needed. The next day, Sarah left for work as usual, but this time, I followed her. I kept a safe distance, careful not to let her notice me. My heart raced as I trailed her through the city, wondering where she was going. My mind was clouded with a million questions, but the most pressing one was, where is she meeting him? It wasn't long before I found myself outside a luxurious hotel. My heart sank as I watched Sarah walk inside, her face filled with an expression of anticipation that sent a chill down my spine. I waited for what felt like hours, each passing minute adding to the dread that was building inside me. I couldn't believe it. The woman I had married, the woman I had been sharing my life with, was about to meet the man she had been cheating on me with, and I was standing outside, watching her walk into his arms. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw Sarah leave the hotel. But she wasn't alone. The man was with her. They walked out together, laughing softly, their hands brushing against each other in a way that made my stomach churn. They were comfortable with each other, like they had been together for years. It was a slap in the face, the final confirmation of everything I had feared. I felt my blood boil with rage, but I couldn't act on it. Not yet. I had to gather more evidence, more proof. This wasn't just about confronting Sarah. This was about making sure I understood the full extent of her betrayal. I needed to know who this man was and why he was so important to her. As they walked away from the hotel, I followed them at a distance, careful to stay out of sight. They got into a car together, and I watched as they drove off in the direction of an upscale neighborhood. My heart raced as I realized they were going to a house. This wasn't just a casual affair. This was something serious. The feeling of betrayal hit me harder than ever. I had been so blind, so trusting, that I never suspected this was happening under my nose. My wife, my perfect wife, was having an affair with a man I knew nothing about. And I had been so caught up in my own life, so focused on everything else that I missed the signs. It wasn't until they pulled into the driveway of a beautiful, secluded house that I realized the full extent of what was happening. I had thought Sarah was just involved with someone at work, a brief fling. But this was different. She had been seeing this man in secret, building a life with him behind my back, all while I was left in the dark, believing our marriage was solid. I felt a wave of anger so intense that I thought I might snap, but I held it in. I had come this far, and I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me now. I needed to find out everything. I watched from my car as Sarah and the man walked into the house. They looked like they belonged there, like they had been doing this for a while. The sight of them together, laughing, sharing a moment, was like a punch to my chest. I had been a fool, trusting her with everything, believing that she would always be there for me. But in that moment, I realized that she had been lying to me for months, possibly longer. The next day, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I had to confront her. I couldn't keep playing the part of the oblivious husband. I had all the evidence I needed, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I had to face her with the truth. I waited until she came home from work that evening, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared for the confrontation. This was it, the moment I had been dreading. But I knew it had to happen. I couldn't let this go any longer. As she walked through the door, I stood up and looked her straight in the eyes. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but filled with an intensity that made her freeze in her tracks. Her face went pale as she saw the look in my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I saw fear in her expression. She knew. She knew that the truth was about to come out. As Sarah stood there, frozen in the doorway, I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew this moment was coming, but I'm sure she never thought it would arrive like this. The calmness in my voice contrasted with the storm inside me. I had finally gathered enough courage to confront her about the betrayal that had shattered everything. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to talk about what's been going on." She hesitated for a moment, clearly debating whether to deny everything or come clean. But I already had the evidence, the text messages, the hotel receipts, the secret meetings. There was no escape, no way out for her. "Emma, She started to speak, but I cut her off. "No, Sarah," I said firmly. "Don't give me the excuses. Don't tell me you were too busy or that it was just a mistake. I know what you've been doing. I know about the affair, and I know it's not the first time." Her face drained of color as she sank into the couch, her hands shaking. She had nowhere to hide now. The truth was out, and there was no denying it. "How long, Sarah?" I asked quietly. "How long has this been going on? How long have you been seeing him behind my back?" Her silence spoke volumes. I could see her struggling, caught between guilt and shame, but she didn't have the strength to lie anymore. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "It's been months, Emma," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." "How could you, Sarah?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly. "You told me you loved me. You said we were partners. We built a life together and you destroyed it without a second thought. I was there for you. I took care of everything, always putting you first. And you went behind my back and betrayed me." I stood up, pacing back and forth, trying to keep my emotions under control. I had been so blindsided by her actions that I didn't know how to respond. All those years I had spent loving her, building a future together, seemed so pointless now. It felt like I had been living in a dream, one that had come crashing down. "Please, Emma, don't leave me," Sarah begged, her voice filled with desperation. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away.
"I don't know what to say to you anymore," I replied, my voice shaking with anger and sadness. "I can't trust you, Sarah. You've lied to me. You've betrayed me in the worst possible way." Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with me. "I'm so sorry, Emma. Please believe me. It was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. It was just one night that turned into more. I never meant for things to spiral out of control like this." I took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. I couldn't look at her anymore, not with the same love I once had. My heart was shattered, and it was hard to even recognize the woman sitting in front of me. She had been my wife, my partner, and now she was nothing more than a stranger. The damage is done, Sarah, I said, my voice steady but filled with pain. You've broken my trust. You've broken everything we had. There's nothing left to fix. You can apologize all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that you've hurt me. You've destroyed this marriage, and I can't go back to it. Not after everything you've done. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not anymore. Not when I had been the one betrayed, the one left in the dark for so long. I need space, Sarah, I said, my voice cold. I need to figure out what comes next, but I can't do this anymore. With that, I walked out of the living room, leaving her behind in the wake of the devastation she had caused. I couldn't look back. I had to move forward, even if it meant leaving the life I had known behind. Over the next few days, Sarah continued to beg for forgiveness. She called me, texted me, even showed up at my apartment with flowers, apologizing for everything. But it was too late. Her words no longer held weight. The lies had piled up for too long, and the damage was beyond repair. I spent those days reflecting on everything I had been through. The pain was overwhelming, but I knew I had to make the right decision for me. Staying in a marriage built on lies and betrayal wasn't an option. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her deceit. As the days passed, I began to rebuild my life. I spent time with friends who supported me, and I took time for myself. I focused on my career, on my passions, and on healing from the heartbreak. But every time I thought about Sarah, I felt the sting of betrayal. I had given her my love, my trust, and she had shattered it all.
The hardest part was letting go of the woman I had loved. But I knew I couldn't stay in a relationship that had been built on deception. I had to move on, no matter how difficult it was. And that's when I made the decision to start fresh, to leave the past behind. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted myself. But in the end, I knew I had done the right thing. The days following my decision to leave felt surreal. It was like waking up from a nightmare and realizing that everything you thought you knew was just a carefully constructed illusion. I kept going over the moments I had shared with Sarah, the trips we took, the quiet evenings at home, the way she used to look at me when I spoke. All of it seemed meaningless now, tainted by the betrayal she had inflicted on me. As I settled into my new apartment, I tried to focus on the future, but my mind kept circling back to Sarah and the life we had once shared. I couldn't escape the feeling of emptiness that lingered, and the guilt of leaving her behind only seemed to make it worse. But deep down, I knew I had made the right decision. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of her lies. One afternoon, while I was out running errands, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated but decided to answer it. To my surprise, it was Mark, Sarah's brother. He told me that he wanted to meet with me. He said that there was something important he needed to share, something I needed to know. My heart skipped a beat. What could Mark possibly want to tell me? Had Sarah confided in him about the affair? Was there more to the story than I had already uncovered? My mind raced with questions, but I agreed to meet him. Later that evening, I met Mark at a local cafe. He looked nervous, glancing around as though he was afraid someone might see us talking. He motioned for me to sit down, his eyes full of concern. "I know this is going to be hard to hear," Mark began, his voice low. "But there's something you don't know. Something I think you need to understand about Sarah." I braced myself for more lies, more excuses. But what he said next hit me like a ton of bricks. "Sarah wasn't just having an affair with that man," he continued. "She was being manipulated. She got involved with him because of a debt she couldn't pay off." I stared at him in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What debt? What does this have to do with her affair?" Mark looked around nervously before continuing. "A few years ago, Sarah got involved with a business venture. She thought it was a great opportunity, but things went south quickly. She got in over her head, and before she knew it, she owed a lot of money to some dangerous people. The man she was seeing? He's one of them. He promised her that he could clear her debt, but in exchange, She had to stay involved with him. My head was spinning. So you're telling me Sarah didn't just cheat on me because she wanted to? She was forced into it? Mark nodded. Yes, she was caught in a bad situation, and she didn't know how to get out. She thought the affair was the only way to make things right, to fix the mess she had gotten herself into. My heart sank as the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together. I had always known Sarah was stressed, but I had never imagined it went this deep. It wasn't just a simple betrayal, it was a complicated mess of financial trouble and manipulation. But why didn't she tell me? I asked, feeling a sense of betrayal deeper than before. Why didn't she come to me for help? Mark sighed, his eyes full of regret. She didn't want to burden you, Emma. She thought she could handle it on her own. But as things got worse, she started feeling trapped. She didn't know how to fix it, and that's when the affair began. It wasn't just about love, it was about survival. She felt like she had no other choice. The revelation left me speechless. Part of me wanted to understand, wanted to believe that Sarah had been acting out of desperation, but the other part of me felt deeply betrayed. She had kept all of this from me, her pain, her struggle, and instead she had lied to me. She had chosen to deceive me, to keep me in the dark while she dealt with it on her own. I know this doesn't make it right, Mark continued, but I just wanted you to understand what really happened. I don't expect you to forgive her right away, but I hope you can see things from her perspective. I sat there, stunned, my emotions all over the place. Could I understand her perspective? Could I find it in my heart to forgive her, knowing the truth? The idea of staying with Sarah now felt even more complicated. On one hand, I had learned about the pressures and the mistakes that had led her to cheat. But on the other hand, the betrayal still stung. The next few days were a blur. I spent a lot of time thinking about what Mark had said. Could I forgive Sarah for what she had done? Was I capable of understanding her reasons for having an affair, even if they were born out of desperation and manipulation? And more importantly, could I ever rebuild the trust that had been destroyed? But as the days passed, I realized something important. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, but it is not impossible. I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to Sarah the way I once had, but the truth had given me clarity. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about how she had handled the situation. If she had been honest with me from the start, things might have been different. But the lies had created a rift between us that might never heal. Still, I couldn't let this define me forever. I had learned from this experience, and it was time for me to move forward, no matter what that meant for Sarah and me. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to let go and focus on building a future, whether it was with Sarah or without her. The days after my conversation with Mark were the hardest. It felt like I was torn in two directions. One side of me wanted to hold on to Sarah, to understand her struggles and try to make sense of everything that had happened. The other side of me was still reeling from the betrayal, from the lies, and from the damage caused by her secret life. As the days passed, I found myself spiraling into a cycle of confusion. I would go over everything that had happened, trying to figure out if I had missed something, if there were signs I had ignored that could have warned me about what was really going on. I felt betrayed, not just by Sarah, but by myself as well. How had I let this happen? How had I trusted someone who had been hiding so much from me? The anger I had been feeling started to subside, replaced by an overwhelming sadness. I had given Sarah everything, my trust, my love, my life, and in return, I had been deceived. The man she had been seeing, the one who had taken advantage of her desperation, had been a part of her life for months. I had been living a lie, believing that everything was fine when, in reality, our marriage had been crumbling beneath the surface. But despite all the pain, something in me knew that I couldn't stay in this toxic environment any longer. I couldn't keep questioning every little thing Sarah did or said. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her betrayal. For my own well being, I needed to move on. I decided it was time for a clean break. I packed my things, took a deep breath, and left the house we had once shared. The moment I stepped out of that door, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that staying with Sarah wasn't the answer. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place where I could start over. It was a fresh start, one that I desperately needed. The first few days were difficult, filled with sadness and uncertainty. But as time went on, I started to realize something important. I was stronger than I had ever known. I had survived the worst betrayal of my life, and I was still standing. I began to focus on myself. I spent time with friends and family who supported me through the difficult days. I rediscovered my passion for photography, something I had put aside while I was in my marriage. I started going to therapy to help me process the trauma I had experienced. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were still moments when I thought about Sarah, about what we had, about the life we could have had if things had turned out differently. But those thoughts were fleeting. The more I focused on my own healing, the more I realized that I didn't need to look back. I needed to look forward. One day, out of nowhere, I received a message from Sarah. It was short, just a simple apology. She said that she had been thinking a lot about everything that had happened and she was sorry for what she had done. She asked if we could talk. I stared at the message, my heart conflicted. Part of me wanted to respond, to find closure, but another part of me knew that there was nothing left to say. I sat with the message for a while, contemplating. But in the end, I realized that I had already closed that chapter. I had given Sarah the chance to explain herself, and I had heard everything I needed to hear. I didn't need her apology anymore. What I needed was to move on, to reclaim my life and my peace. So, I deleted the message without responding. I didn't need to drag this out any longer. My journey wasn't about her. It was about me. And I was finally on the path to healing, to becoming the person I was always meant to be. The hardest part of this whole journey had been accepting that sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward. We can't change the past, no matter how much we wish we could. We can't force someone to love us or treat us with respect if they're not willing to do it. But what we can do is take control of our own lives, heal from the wounds of betrayal, and build a future that's better than what we left behind. As I continued to heal, I realized that the most important thing I had learned was this: we are all worthy of love, respect, and honesty. And when someone betrays us, it's not a reflection of our worth. It's a reflection of their character. I had given everything to Sarah, but I wasn't going to lose myself in the process. I was ready to start over, to rebuild my life with the strength I had gained from this painful experience. Call to action. What about you? Have you ever faced betrayal in your life? How did you cope, and what steps did you take to heal? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. If you're on a similar journey of healing, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. You're not alone, and we're all here to support one another.